Hey everybody, Jeff Drozdowski, DrozdTalks.com, coming at you today with a message about nonverbal communications and how it affects us as leaders. Maybe you've heard this stat, maybe you haven't, but 93% of how we communicate with people is based on our nonverbal cues. So you've heard the old adage before, actions speak louder than words, and it is very, very true. So from a leadership perspective, I think we really need to be aware of those nonverbal cues that we're giving off, because we don't want to give the wrong impression about an idea that somebody has or feedback that we're giving somebody that may come off negative when we really try and mean it as positive. So I'm going to go over 3 of these with you today briefly, and then I'm going to invite you to go over to my latest podcast at the Drozdcast podcast, speaking of motivation and leadership, and hear the rest of the episode. And the episode is titled, "It's Not What You Say, It's How You Say It." So the first one I want to touch on is facial expressions. And it doesn't matter what country you live in, doesn't matter what part of the world that you're from, your facial expressions are consistent throughout. Doesn't matter where you're at, people know when you're happy, people know when you're sad, people know when you're angry, people know when you're thoughtful. Doesn't matter the language that you speak. Your facial expressions tell the story. And one of the strongest nonverbal cues that we have as leaders non-verbally is the rolling of our eyes. And a lot of times we roll our eyes because we're frustrated, we don't agree with what somebody says, we're frustrated, and that is just one of those qualities as a leader that we can't be giving off in the far majority of the situations that we have. So be aware of your facial expressions and the rolling of your eyes. The second one, speaking of eyes, is eye contact. And at least here in America, 3 seconds is about acceptable length for when you look at somebody before it starts to get uncomfortable for that person that you're talking to. So 3 seconds, look away, look up, look around, reconnect with that person with your eye contact, and that is appropriate. In other cultures, in other parts of the world, it may be a little bit longer, it may be a little bit shorter, but when you make that eye contact, you gotta make it count. And you want it to be firm and that you have a sense of conviction with your eye contact, but you don't want it to last too long because then it starts to come off negatively. And then the last thing I want to touch on is your tone of voice. And that is a very powerful thing. I mentioned 93% of what people think about us is based on our nonverbals. And roughly 1/3 of what people believe in what we're saying is based on that tone of voice. So you have a lot of power, you have a lot of influence, and the tone that you take with people, whether you need to be firm with them, whether you need to be happy with them, show laughter, show enjoyment, that all comes out in your tone of voice. So as you're trying to create a mood as you're speaking as a leader, you got to make sure that you're using the right tone of voice. So those are just 3 of them in regards to nonverbal communications. If you go to the podcast though, you'll learn about body movements and gestures, you'll learn about space, how far to stand from each other. You'll also learn about touch and how really in the workplace, touch is something that you want to try to avoid as much as possible. But handshakes and things like that are something that is acceptable, and you need to make sure that you're giving the right kind of handshake and using the right kind of touch in the work environment as leaders. So that's going to do it for now. Jeff Drozdowski, Jeff at DrozdTalks.com. DrozdTalks.com is the website. Around me here is the platforms to get to that podcast, as well as my social media. Go to YouTube, subscribe to YouTube, and also I've started emailing, so maybe some of you have gotten emails. Love to hear back from you as well. So that's it for now. Take care.